Okay, it's been a few days since we went live, but I think I still know how this works. We're opening the floor up for questions as people start to roll in. Hopefully we have a bit of an audience today. We can get to some good work. We can answer all of the hot topics, everything on your mind, anything on your mind, throw my way. We'll tackle some of those as well. I'll let you know about a few things that are going to be going on in the near future here with Project Pure Athlete. It's been a busy last week getting some things prepared, getting some things in order, and super excited to be able to share that information with you. I've been really enjoying these YouTube live sessions, primarily because even after they've been posted, they obviously format really nicely and they're continued to be up there as just content. So really a big fan of the YouTube live platform. Excuse me. So if you're funneled on here and you're wondering what's going on, the floor is open for a Q&A session. I am Coach Tyler Ray, one of the owners here of Project Pure Athlete. I'm an expert jump coach and strength and conditioning coach, just available for all of you to pick my brain if you'd like. That being said, if I don't know something or if I'm not comfortable answering a question, which doesn't happen too often, I'll let you know where you can find those answers. Midnight in Indonesia. Yep, we are all at different times and you are far into the future. How's the future doing? You doing well? You should be getting some sleep. Get some rest. Get some rest. I am in my home garage gym / office here in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, the Great White North, although we're not really that north. Give you some context if you're familiar with the North American map in the US and Canada. We're actually like level with Chicago. So we're actually like the very southern tip of Canada. We're hot right now. Yesterday, we got up to 90 for the Americans, 90, low 90s. With the humidex, it was over 100. That being said, if you're Celsius, if you're of the metric system like the rest of the world, we were in the 30s and it was warm. Bill, how you doing? It's going well. It's going very, very well. It's been a busy week trying to get things in order. We opened up. So this is some good information. If you are a coach or if you are someone that is looking to make a step into the world of vertical jump training and coaching, we have opened up the very first PPA Level 1 jump coach certification online. So this June 28th, which is a Sunday, I will be hosting a Zoom full day certification for those that are interested. We have a few people already signed up, so I'm super excited for that day. We're going to try to compress a 2-day experience in person into a 1-day online experience that is formatted a little bit differently. That being said, we're going to get through all of the great information and have you come out the other side. Really, the goal is, how do I get you to look at jumping differently through a brand new lens that allows you to assess, identify, analyze, and provide intervention for athletes to be able to jump higher and perform better in their sport of play. So that's the goal. If you're interested in joining our online certification this upcoming June 28th, you can email me at projectpureathlete@gmail.com, or you can put a message here or send a direct message to me over YouTube, comment in this video below, DM me at Project Pure Athlete on Instagram. You'll find a way. You'll get a hold of me and we'll sign you up. You can also register just by going to projectpureathlete.com and go to our products or our store, and you can register straight through that. So super excited for that. What do we have here? How much vertical can you gain in 1 year? King MD, that is a huge variable. I've seen people, really put in that consistent effort and make a change of a few inches based on obviously some need for a variety of different things in their training. So some people just need to get stronger to be able to support positions. Some people really have that strength, need to learn how to jump. They need to learn how to refine their technique in order to source all of that power. So it really is a range anywhere from 0 to upwards of 15 to 20 inches, really, if you're putting in a consistent effort and depending where you're at. So I wouldn't go into your vertical jump training journey with like a specific amount of inches in mind. I just go in saying, listen, the goal is to be better. The goal is to be a more competent athlete. And that looks different athlete to athlete. That's the goal. It's really putting your training experience into perspective and holding strong to the journey. Life sweet. Hope you're staying safe as well. We are we're really doing our best to abide by all the new news. That being said, we are still waiting to hear all of the updates. So Canada is a little bit less proactive, or not proactive is the wrong word, a little bit less concerned overall with like jumpstarting the economy like the US. That being said, like we're starting to implement new things, but we are still very much so abiding by a lot of these physical distance and kind of new social norms, masks and things like that. A little bit, yeah. So we're a little bit more conservative that way, in the sense that we're trying to take a little bit more calculated steps overall. I feel. That being said, wherever you are in the world, just make sure you're doing your part to be safe and interact responsibly. I'm a volleyball player. My jump is satisfying for me, but to generate more power in my hands, I have to decrease my jump. Is that correct? Or I have to change? If you mean in order to increase the power in your arm swing, you have to decrease your jump. No. So the goal really is, as a volleyball player, is to maximize your jump and maximize your swing. And a lot of the smooth acceleration that we transition through a jump into our swing, they work hand in hand. So if the timing's right, if you're timing, more importantly, timing the set right, then you don't have to jeopardize your jump for your swing or your swing for your jump. Obviously, there's some, changes and adjustments that can be made on the fly in an approach to affect the most appropriate swing, depending on where your set is. But to me, it's, there's not really such thing as a really bad set. It's bad approaches. It's like, you just need to adjust, right? Setters do their best. Sometimes there's a shank set, of course, but your job as an attacker and as an offensive player is to make adjustments and be the most, efficient you can on the offense. So no, I don't believe so. How do you know what you need to take your explosiveness to the next level? That's a great question. I think instead of trying to pinpoint exactly what it is you need, I think it's really trying to wrap your head around just committing to the entirety, the 360 approach to training, which is that you need to make sure you have a good progressive strength training protocol in place, which supports and builds your body to be able to withstand all of the energy created in a jump, from the takeoff to the landing to that rotational stress on the body. So you need that progressive resistance training. And if you're like, I don't know what to do for that, to me, it's like there's nothing more intuitive than just grab some remnants of coaching and a consistent process. We are going to be releasing Team PPA mobile online training, which is through our new training app. It's coming out very shortly. We're just kind of tightening up the last little bit of workflow on the app, and then we'll be releasing that. It'll be $39 a month, or you can buy the entire year up front and save some money, but you get direct access to the coaches, you get daily workouts, you get maintenance, you get tracking of all of your workouts, so you can see trends over time, some really cool graphic representations of the work you put in. We also have a video library of over 1,000 variations of movement, so we can kind of customize those workouts, and you're able to change out things that don't work directly for you. Like if you get a workout, you're like, this is not working for me, or this is causing me pain, you contact your coach. The coach makes a suggestion, and you can swap out exercises and have that instruction right at your fingertips. So that's going to be something that's super important. Jump technique is another thing that's going to be extremely important, is understanding the importance of position and how position allows you to express the strength and power that you already possess. That's why we're able to, walk into a situation with a brand new athlete and affect change so quickly. We're not making you stronger. That's just not how the human body works. We're not going to make you stronger in a day. What we're going to do is we're going to show you how to express what you already have kind of lying dormant through opening up these new positions, new behaviors, and making you a more efficient athlete. Strength and plyos for single leg jumping power. So we train the one-leg and two-legged jumpers very similarly. Now the differences obviously come down to the jump specific. So like the actual technique of the takeoff is different visually, obviously, and there's some setup differences. And obviously the big difference is one is off one leg and one is off two. But when it comes down to the in-gym protocol, it looks very similar. We do almost exclusively, not completely exclusively, but a lot of single limb training with our bilateral athletes or two-legged jumping athletes. You have to think about the way sport functions, right? It's very minimal times when you're like completely squared up to your target, your feet are positioned directly beside each other, and you're able to kind of brace through a linear plane of action. There's a lot of rotation that happens in sport. There's a lot of loading of one leg and transitioning to another leg, moving forward and backward, and really controlling our kind of skeleton relative to space and time. So what we do is we implement strength training that allows you to build resiliency in a shifting kind of dynamic sport environment. So that means that we're doing a lot of things like, Bulgarian split squats, single leg RDLs. We're doing step ups. We're doing, lateral lunging. We're doing things that load the body in kind of these more exposed positions that could lead to things like injuries if you're not training them. And we do that for one-legged and two-legged athletes. If I can squat 1.5 times my body weight, could I potentially produce the amount of force required to dunk on 10, or is 2 times body weight still needed? Let me put it this way, Rashid. So the landmarks of like needing to have a 2-time body weight squat or a 2.5-time body weight deadlift are relative to the type of jumper you are. I mean, let's put it this way. There were 2 very popular Olympic sprinters back in the 80s and 90s. One, Ben Johnson, you might not know these names, is a Canadian athlete that won the Olympic Games, but was later tested positive for steroids. However, as an athlete, extremely powerful, extremely explosive, ran the 100 meters in he was in the sub 9.8 second mark. He had a back squat of 600 pounds. He was about a 185-pound athlete, 600-pound squat. This guy was an absolute semi-truck. Like, he could move weight. In the same breath, there was this wonderful sprinter from Great Britain, Linford Christie, who was a similar timed 100-meter runner, much more elastic in nature, much more reactive athlete that had a back squat of somewhere around 225 at a similar body weight, a little bit lighter. So you have 2 athletes that run the same speed, both very explosive, both very reactive and powerful, yet they source their energy slightly differently. And as a result, have different relative outputs of strength. So what I'm getting at is, don't get too caught up on like having to reach these landmarks. And once you reach them, you're definitely going to get your goal. What I mentioned before, which is that kind of 360 approach to training, you start to find out what your body thrives from. Some people, as they become a lot stronger in the gym, they lift more and more weight, they jump higher and higher. Other people, that is less conducive to the way that they produce power and actually can suppress their ability to produce power more elastically and actually jump not quite as high because they need more reactive, explosive plyometric training. Still need strength training, but that looks different. Okay, so don't get too caught up in that. Find a good program. As you work through it, you're going to find out what your body responds to the most, and then you can really put in that work. Give me 1 second here. My dog came blasting through the door, opened it up, and now all this awesome air conditioning in here is being let out. Just give me 1 moment. And then, not to mention, the little bugger comes in with wet feet all over my clean gym floor. Give me a break. Okay, let's continue on. How many times a week can I work on my vert? Because I also want to work on my upper body. I think the big overarching issue to that statement is that thinking that working your upper body and working your vert are different. Working on your vertical is working on being a better athlete, which means you're working on everything about your body, right? You have to think about your upper body is a huge proponent to actually facilitating your jump, being explosive, right? Powerful shoulders, powerful posterior upper back, and all the way down through that posterior chain, strong core through that deep rotation. Now, it's all very important to producing power and producing usable movement for jumping. So it doesn't need to be trained separately. It's part of, jump training is just athletic training with bias toward jumping. So if what you mean is how many times can I train like plyometrics, like jumping, like actually leaving the ground, we will be anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week, depending on the athlete and the time of year that we're figuring out their program for. So I see most pro dunkers are 2-foot jumpers. Is that better than a 1-foot? No. So there's no better or worse. Both are just different. It's relative to the athlete. A lot of times what happens is you'll see athletes that can produce their amount of power more so through one means or the other. So put it in perspective, when I was a track and field athlete, I was obviously 1-foot jumping as track and field, and I jumped very well. When I transitioned into pro dunking, I transitioned to 2 feet. I'm a little bit of a heavier athlete, and I found displacing my mass a little bit easier in a 2-foot setting, and I was able to jump very high off 2 feet. Some people jump higher off 1 foot. There's no better or worse. They're just different. Do you recommend training 2-foot jumping on both sides rather than favoring one side? I do recommend that. That's from the hat wearing man. I like your name. So patterning both plant sequences and off 1 foot and 2 feet, it creates balance through jumping. And I think what it does is it reduces the tendency to form these compensations or these compensatory patterns that cause injury over time. I'm kind of a byproduct of that. I jumped off of 1 foot, right foot in track and field exclusively for 15 years. And then as a pro dunker, I was a right-left plant and did that exclusively. And now I have a left side anterior lateral herniation in my spine from the stress created in the rotation and the tightness created in this kind of one moving, this one rotational pattern that created this imbalance. So yes. How is your speed enhancement program going? So Miro, that's it. I was actually going to talk about that. So for those that know this already, I kind of undertook the challenge of this month, started a little bit in May, of taking 30 days to try to get as fast as I possibly could. I tested my 60-meter dash as a heavier, older athlete, and I tested it at 8.2 seconds. My personal best in the 60 was 7:07. Now, about 5 days into training for sprinting, I had really upped the amount of running, and I hurt my left foot. Now, there's a muscle that runs kind of from the big toe up into the foot. Excuse me. I just had a salad and now I'm talking too fast. Okay, calm down, Tyler. Long story short, I hurt my foot. I've had to adjust my training, and I've made the call and the conscious decision last couple of days to postpone my speed training challenge because I don't want to just jump in and start running as fast as possible again. I'm gonna need to do this more intelligently, and I'm at a point in my life as a mature athlete, as a coach, that I don't need to hurt myself in order to get content for YouTube. So will I get faster eventually? Absolutely. I'm still training. So I throw discus as well. I was a former decathlete. I throw as a master's athlete, and I've been throwing more discus. It's very explosive. It's very jump oriented in a lot of ways, a lot of rotation. There's a block, there's pushing, there's acceleration, and it gives me a really similar feeling of jumping, and it doesn't put the same stress on my body. I can throw a discus as explosively as I want without any direct spine pain, which is the best feeling ever. So I'm training for that, lifting and throwing. There's a park over here that I've kind of mapped out a discus circle. I have space in my garage to put my shoes on and do some footwork. It's awesome. But thanks for asking. Jukebox. So we have someone that knows the old dunk days. Raymond says, what would a typical week look like when you were dunking professionally? So if I was in a competitive time of year, so, spring through the summertime, my typical week was, so I'd be training probably 6 days a week, and the training on those 6 days would look different block to block. So I usually go in like 3 to 4 week blocks and then adjust. So giving you a general look, I'd have 2 days during the week that I'd actually jump. One day would be an all out, like off court, full warm up, and maybe 25 to 50 jumps that get progressively higher. I would kind of cap a jump session or a dunk session when I felt like I'd reach that echelon where it's like I have 1 or 2 jumps that I know that are starting to fall off, and then I would stop it so I don't injure myself. I would lift. I'd be in the gym lifting 3 or 4 times a week, and one of the days would be very maintenance oriented, a lot of just like movement and stretching and keeping my hips loose. And my training was primarily very single limb oriented, a lot of single leg work that created a lot of stability in my ankles, knees, and hips, which allowed me to really, really approach at a great rate of speed. If anybody's ever seen my dunk highlights, you'll know that I had an exceptionally fast approach, a very elastic jumper, and a lot of force through the ground. So I really worked on building up that resiliency in my low limbs, my ankles, and my hips, and my core to be able to transition all of this speed upward. I also was very dialed in on nutrition, meaning that I kind of ate similarly throughout the week. I had a very high protein, high fat, moderate to low carb intake because of just the way my body utilized fuel. That's the way I found it to be the most beneficial. I didn't drink almost ever when I was an athlete. I would, in the off season, which is a little bit more through the winter, I would allow myself every now and then to like go hang out with my friends and have a couple drinks, but I was very dialed in. I was just making a lot of sacrifices that I think a lot of people weren't making, which is like, I was trying to live like a professional athlete, and I did. So that's kind of what it looked like. I did a low rim session and a high rim session once a week. The low rim session, my jumps will obviously be anywhere from like 50 to 75% effort so that I can manage intensity and also get a little bit more volume out of that. So this is from Life Sweet. I'm in Angola. Wow, there we are, bringing it in from all over the world. In this, what you said about the 360 about Vert. So I found some saying that jumping more actually leads to improved Vert. So the jump every day method will absolutely help you jump higher, but what it does is it does not account for the stress on the body. So it's not something that we recommend doing because what it does is your body will just continually break down and you will eventually get hurt. You just will. I've seen it over and over again. And those that have done the jump everyday method as pros, Jordan Kilgannon did it, Nico Christie did it. Both of those guys will tell you how important putting in progressive resistance training is. And that's after going through that. So I wouldn't recommend it. Chris, what's up, Chris? Lincoln, sweetest dog ever. Lincoln is a cool dog, and Lincoln is not really liking the heat. So he's trying to get into this air-conditioned office with me. When's the next episode of the volleyball vertical training? Oh, Shane, that's a good question. I could definitely put that up in the next day or so. I apologize. I got pulled into a couple other things. You're waiting to see some more of those drills. So that's the series that we have, the backyard vertical jump overhaul with 2 elite young volleyball players that have put in work over a weekend. And I'm super excited to be able to give you the next episode. I think there's 2 more. What upper body non-core exercises do you recommend? Also, is cleaning necessary? My wrist is not flexible and fragile. So number 1 is with cleans, it's less likely a wrist problem, more likely a mobility problem through your upper back, preventing your shoulder blades from rotating and getting you into a proper position. If you're here and your wrist is bent back, it's an issue with getting your elbow high enough. If your elbow's up high, look at my wrist can stay nice and flat. There's not as much of extension happening through the wrist. So a lot of it is being able to get your elbows up high to be able to prevent you from overloading the wrist. And that's going to be getting those lats opened up. So something that helped before doing cleans is opening up your lats, getting on a roller, moving your shoulder through ranges of motion. You said, what upper body other than core would you recommend for jumping? Shoulder stability, a couple pull-ups, supine rows, things for the upper back to support the shoulders, create a stable shoulder, stable, strong shoulders and upper back. I mean, a lot of other things as well, but that's a good start for you. If I had to pick one exercise, it'd probably be something like a pull-up. If you can't do a pull-up, then a body weight row or something along those lines. How to activate the hip flexors during 2-foot jumps. So activation of muscles at maximum speed and effort is not something that you're going to be able to consciously do. So that means that you're going to be having to put work in to strengthen the hip flexors and put work in to make sure that your hip flexors are reactive. So it's going to be moving the hip through flexion and extension under a variety of different loads. Something like, I'm not 100% sure what part of your jump you're referring to or who's told you that your hip flexors are underactive. It would really depend largely on what the root cause of your problem is as a jumper, and I'd have to see your jumps to be able to do that. So are you a believer of static stretching, or do you think flexibility should be trained in a different way? Flexibility can be trained many ways and should be approached in a variety of ways because our muscles go under a variety of different velocities of stretching, meaning that static stretching is something that can be restorative, but it's more for helping to regulate your nervous system and kind of down regulating your body. Something on an off day, on a maintenance day, a little bit of static stretching is good. I've also known some people that have used it effectively prior to doing a workout. That being said, you're not going to want to hold stretches for long durations of time. It's more about getting your mindset right. So if doing some static stretching is something that is benefiting you mind-wise, meaning that it's putting you in a good place before a workout or before jumping, a little bit of static stretching is not going to hurt. If you're sitting there for 30 or 40 minutes holding stretches for 3 to 5 minutes long, you're absolutely going to reduce some of the elastic potential of your tissues. So I wouldn't necessarily advise that. I'm stealing mature athlete from you when describing myself. There's no other way, Chris. Let's put it this way. I could say old athlete, but at the end of the day, we're not old. Even somebody in their 40s and 50s, in the grand scheme of being old, they're not old. They're older, but they're mature athletes. They have the experience under their belt. They have multiple, successes and failures to be able to pull and source from. So mature athlete to me is a much more appropriate statement piece than old athlete. Sometimes you feel older, but that's just a part of growing and a part of adapting to the shift in how your body kind of hangs together year to year. If you have 2-meter forearms, long, I was picturing like forearms being 2 meters, do you mean like, I don't really know. If you have really long forearms and really short humerus, it's going to be difficult to get into those positions. However, if you're wondering whether doing cleans is necessary for jumping, the answer is no. It's most definitely not necessary. Is a clean a good exercise? Yeah, but a clean is only a good exercise if it's executed properly. What is a clean establishing? A clean establishes powerful, violent hip extension. That's all it is. It's hip extension. The shrug and the pull under at the top, that is a catch. That is a technical component of the clean. So for me, lowest barrier to entry is always going to be the most appropriate for the masses, meaning I have to find the exercise that the most amount of athletes can have success at. Is that going to be a clean? Probably not. It more often than not turns into some sort of like butchered reverse curl, or some, especially full power cleans from the ground, like hips elevate really high and fast, and you have a full straightened out leg and you haven't even unraveled your torso. A clean is a very technical movement. And that's why there's an entire discipline devoted to that in sport. We call it weightlifting, right? All weightlifters do are clean and jerks and snatches. That's all they do. And they don't go into the gym every day and just load up a bar and do heavy cleans. What they do is they work and they pattern the technique of their cleans and their techniques of their snatch so often that the movement is exceptionally efficient so that they can just work on getting stronger. So for a jumper, your priority is jumping high. Your priority is not being an Olympic lifter. So it's not always the best choice. Do I have it programmed in some of our programs? Yes, because people keep asking about it, because there are people out there that are, you can't jump higher without cleans, and that's absolute bullshit. And I'll tell you right now, as one of the most seasoned elite vertical jump coaches in the world, that it's absolutely not necessary to have in your program to jump higher. There's many different things that you can do to achieve powerful hip extension. You can do things like glute or hip thrusts, which are just upper back supported hip thrusting. You can do kettlebell swing variations. You can do plate swing variations. You can do banded hip extensions. You can do a variety of different movements. So don't get too tied into any one thing being the be all end all. It's a waste of your thoughts. Sorry for so many questions. How much can you progress with only plyos? How do you make the plyos as effective as possible? The question, because they're the only thing I've ever done since quarantine. So you're not alone with that. I think a lot of people have this mindset that, in order to jump higher, I need to do things that are jumpy, right? I need to be as explosive as possible. You have to think about a jump as being the byproduct of kind of a pyramid of work. I mean, the base of your pyramid is going to be the most stable, which is going to be your strength and your stability. And you're going to taper towards the specific of what you're doing. So at the top of that pyramid is going to be technique and jumping. It's going to be the detail work. So we need to hit those bottom pieces, the strength, the power, the speed, stability, flexibility, mobility, all these ilities that create this very robust athlete that can then really dial in the specifics at the top of the pyramid. Plyos are kind of like middle of the pack of that pyramid. So if you're tackling the middle of the pack, yet you don't have that big bottom base of the pyramid, what you've done is you've tried to create a structure out of something that's not quite stable. And what will happen is after a while, it'll topple over. And that's just you getting some sort of injury because you don't have that built in. And again, how much you can gain on that, it's a variety of different results. You can be anywhere from 0 all the way up to 20 inches, depending on who you are. My vert didn't increase since about 2 months. What advice can you give me about this? Because it's stressing me out. Well, King MD, 2 months in the grand scheme of training is a fart in the wind. It's almost nothing. You put in work, and that's good. And you should be very proud of the fact that you've put in 2 months of work. But 2 months of work is a start. You're still an infant when it comes to training. Vertical jump improvement is not a 3-month program. That is kind of a jump start. It helps you get things moving. Vertical jump improvement is lifelong. It is month to month, year to year. The highest jumpers you see in the world are people that have put in work over years. They become the most obsessed with the process of becoming better, and they're the ones that are least likely to stop because they're like, well, I'm not seeing any more than an inch, so this is stupid. You have to commit to the process, which means that there are going to be times when you train that your vertical doesn't go up, but that doesn't mean you're not getting better. If you've played any 2K sport, and you bring an athlete up, they all have stats, right? They all have their, if it's 2K basketball, you got like shooting is 85, you got dribbling is this, you have jumping ability is this, or dunking or passing. When you put in work as an athlete, what'll happen is your body kind of fills up those meters that need to be filled up. And if there are meters that have to be filled up before your jump meter can go up, it'll do that. But that to you might look like, well, I'm not seeing any results because I'm not jumping higher. But that is not the only measure of success. If you're only concerned with jumping higher and not concerned with building up any other components of being an athlete, then you're a fan of jumping. You're not a jumping athlete. You're a fan of it. You have to be willing to commit yourself to the process and understand that it takes patience and consistency. If you're not willing to understand that, you're going to constantly be searching for the next best thing and the greatest thing, and you're not going to have any type of congruency. You're going to fall off more and more, and it'll be very frustrating. So keep at it. Be patient. Let yourself off the hook. It's okay if you train and your vertical doesn't go up. You're getting stronger. You're putting in work. You can't do work and that not have some bearing on your success. Think about how much work goes in behind the scenes, right? For someone that's building a business, you don't always see that work at the front, but you see that business slowly and slowly start to creep more and more into the public. And you're like, oh, there it is again. And there it is again. But for a long, long time, that business put in work and it stayed under the radar. So be willing to be that business that puts in the work and grows with that effort over time. Okay, what do we got here? We got a lot, so I'm trying to catch up. Just bear with me. Sven Schroeder, what'd you say? I meant it as fun. Oh, 2'4". I see what you're saying. You exaggerated. I was like, those are really, I thought I was around, and I was like, those are big ass forearms. Are Nordic Ham Curls going to help increase my vert? They could be a very integral part of a program. And if you have weak hamstrings, then progressing yourself into a Nordic, absolutely make your hamstrings stronger, build up different aspects of your body, and you'll jump higher. Nordic hamstring curls are exceptionally challenging. And if you have weak hamstrings, I would not recommend strapping your legs in and trying to just slam yourself into a Nordic. You're likely going to get small tears or ruptures. You have to progress yourself into a Nordic. So I would start with something like an elevated surface below you, like a box, and make the range of motion small, and you're controlling yourself through the eccentric or the lowering. When you lower yourself in a Nordic, okay, if this is your hamstring, if you're lowering yourself, that gets longer. And that lengthening is what puts tension on where the hamstring originates and where it attaches to or inserts to. So we have to build up the strength of the tendons to be able to support the muscular output. So slowly. On the topic of mature athlete, have you ever noticed depreciation of vertical power from your athletes in their 20s versus their 30s? No. In fact, a lot of athletes that continue to train into their 30s will continue to improve their vertical into their 30s. The other half of Project Pure Athlete, Coach Chase, is a really good example of this. His peak jumping time, and he'd been training since his teenage years, was like 32, 33 years old. So it's one of those things where as you continue to put in and layer year on and year on, is you build more robustness, more awareness, and more connectedness as an athlete. And that over time will help you continue to jump higher. There's eventually going to be a point of kind of diminishing return where, your body changes and testosterone levels start to dip and things become more challenging as you get older. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop jumping. It just means that you need to approach your training slightly different. Ever thought of expanding PPA abroad, like with some sort of branches in various nations? So Miro, we're actually continually certifying new PPA coaches that are from all over. So we have coaches as far east as Israel, down south in Brazil, throughout the US, here in Canada. We're continuing to grow, and we're being patient. I talked about that with your training. It's very similar to how, I've approached business. A lot of people are only becoming aware of Project Pure Athlete now, and they're thinking, wow, they just started up and this is great. Been doing this for 16 years. Coach Chase has been a coach for over 10 years. We are not brand new, and I've been putting in frontline work with athletes since I was 20 years old. So it's really a byproduct of commitment and being passionate and letting that passion fuel me, and understanding that at times you do things and you don't get that immediate reward for them. You just put in the work. You know how many things I've done in my career for free, how many seminars I've hosted, how many times I've trained athletes just to get the experience, just to be able to continually sharpen my sword. So that's what I'd recommend in a training stance too, is just take opportunity, just keep moving and learn. I've been jumping for like 2 years now. Would a 38-inch max vertical be good progress? I'm white and not aware of how much my genetics play. So being white has no bearing. Just like that's one thing that we're definitely not supportive of, is like being like, I'm white, so I'm not going to jump as high. Like highest vertical I've ever seen in person off an approach was by a white guy. But I've also seen like people of different color jump high. We have people like Asian. We have, people from African American descent, and Caucasians, and all over the place. It's just bodies. So that being said, 38 inches is a phenomenal jump. You have to understand that when you're jumping in the mid high 30s into the 40s, you're in an elite class of people. But you start to compare yourself to the people in that same pool, and then you shrink your you shrink kind of that self-worth on a whole. You're like, well, I jump 38 inches, but that guy jumps 48 inches, so I'm not good. Well, in the grand scheme of things, you're still of the top 1% of people in the planet that can jump 38 inches. So you celebrate where you need to celebrate. And knowing that 38 inches is phenomenal, and you can continue to improve that with a patient, consistent approach over time. And genetics play a part for sure. Again, I don't know exactly how much they play, but I believe with hard work, everybody is capable of improving their vertical. But more importantly, they're capable of improving themselves as athletes. And a good jumper is a good athlete, and that's all we really do is try to create good athletes. Yeah, Sven, good answer. It is. Starting with 40, you slowly get into the elite realms of jump height. Chris, embrace patience with vert training. Also, stress can actually work against you. You got this. So Chris Hickox here is one of our PPA certified coaches, phenomenal guy, ex-track athlete. He's a dunker as well, basketball player, and a mature athlete like myself, and knows the importance of being patient. So to the people in this space that have put in the time and effort and have the experience to be able to provide perspective, because it's awesome to think and hear a guy be like, yep, do this program, you're going to get 12 inches on your vert. It makes you feel good. You're like, awesome, I want to get 12 inches. And then when you do the program and you only get 2, you're like, this didn't even work and I'm failed and I can't jump high, but you still jump 2 inches higher. Be very, very, very careful of claims on programs that you're seeing on the internet. Okay, I'll promise you, as someone that actually does what I coach, meaning that, or what I preach. I'm a coach. I do this all the time. I travel the world and coach people in person, online. I coach people. I coach coaches. The only thing that works, the only secret to jump training is consistent work over time. It's the only thing. How mobile should jumpers be? Maybe just enough to deep squat, for example. So something like a full range squat, while good on a mechanical side to be able to move into that range, to have to load a full range squat is not necessary to be an elite jumper. I'll put it this way. I had a 48-inch official measured vertical. I did parallel squats, half squats, mostly box squats when I was training. That being said, we've advanced and evolved training over time. But to say it's necessary is too bold. Is it a good practice to improve mobility and subsequently improve your stability over time? Yes, 100%. But it's not mandatory to have a full ass to grass back squat as part of your program to be able to progress. Just because you see an elite level jumper, dunker, basketball, volleyball player doing it doesn't mean you have to. Understand that training is about finding a stimulus that is appropriate for your body through a range of motion that suits your anthropomorphic or your ratios of like how your body is built. Meaning that some people getting into a full ass to grass squat is exceptionally harder than other people. So we have to be able to pace ourselves certain ways to be able to know what's appropriate athlete to athlete. I did back squats, sometimes some deadlifting, but the majority of my training was all single leg. A lot of single, like Bulgarian split squats, single leg RDLs, lunging variations, and step ups. Okay, Remix is 37. Yeah, I think he's, if not 38, like he's again a guy that just continually gets better. Now, Remix is an outlier. Remix is someone that has an outlying mentality and a physicality to him. So at 38 years old, I'm 36, if I was to look at Remix and say, wow, Remix is that good and I'm only this good, so I'm, you know what I mean? Like, you start talking yourself into a negative spiral. You have to put things in perspective and understand that your journey is different than another person's journey. How do I treat muscle contusion? I got knee to my quad today at practice. So a contusion is going to require some time to reduce an inflammation. The inflammation is actually going to be beneficial for you. You can ice the quad if you'd like to provide some kind of a short-term relief and desensitization, but you're going to want to allow that to heal itself, which is going to require some inflammation and some swelling. Lots of water, keep yourself hydrated. You can do some passive movements on there. You can do some very light that area, but you definitely don't want to be digging in. You want to give it some time to heal. So it'll heal. Muscle contusion, it happens. It's part of sport. I'm trying to increase the speed of my last 2 steps of my approach. What are some exercises you can recommend other than sprinting? You can pattern that part of your approach in an overspeed fashion. So we have videos on the Ppa YouTube on overspeed approaches where you can fix a band up under your armpits and anchor that in front of you and really work through that push and that punch of the block foot with extra speed. So it's going to pull you through a greater rate of speed. You'll have to reinforce your upper body by kind of leaning up into that band so it doesn't bury you forward, which is a really good tactile exercise to be able to reinforce good position. Hi, Tyler. Bought your Elite program. I had a few questions about the program. I sent those questions via email to you. What's the best email to reach you at? Your help would be much appreciated. You can send it to info@projectathlete.com. That being said, if you have some questions here, just post them and I'll quickly let you know what's going on. If I have that answer with me, I might have to refer over to Coach Chase. Damn. Progress of building PPA. I'll make a request for Angola, and there we go. You know what? We'd love to travel. Obviously, with the landscape of the world right now, with kind of COVID stuff going on, we can't. The borders from Canada to the U.S. are closed. Like I can't cross the border to go to the airport to fly out from Detroit. So it's tough. How much would your vert differ if I only jump on the sand? So, Chris, if you are a beach volleyball athlete, you have definitely more of a need for absolute power output, which means your ability to produce power over a slightly longer range of motion, still at a high velocity for that range of motion. So you are going to be doing things a little bit more speed strength work, moving dumbbells and lighter loads really fast from a varying degree of ranges of motion, all the way from parallel all the way up to quarter squat. And patterning your approach in the sand is going to be important. Understanding that sand approach is a little bit more gallopy versus the indoor court approach is a lot more linear and downward with a lot more horizontal acceleration. So, the program itself you will still benefit from all or any of the programs we have as a beach volleyball athlete, because it will make you a better athlete. It'll be when you finish programs like that, if you want to dial in and isolate certain areas of your own weakness to kind of build up and work up. So to be finding out what you need, I think you'd be a really good candidate for our Team PPA training app that will be able to, kind of mix and match certain things for you so that you can really have that kind of, poignant approach to training. Sorry, I had a brain fart. Mr. Indonesia. There we go. We got another one from Indonesia in the house. Austin, last video said that you would think of a few athletes that might have max verts of 56 to 56 inches. So 56 inches. Could you name who you think would have this high of a vert? I wrote a response to that under that video. And as far as I'm aware, we haven't had any verified 55 plus inch verticals to that 60-inch range. I know we've had a few athletes definitely between that 50 and 54-inch range. Is it Jamal? No, Crawford. Let me just give me a second here. I'll bring him up. What's this guy's name? Jamal Harris. Definitely in the low 50s, 52, I believe he tested at. Riley Smith, same type of thing, low 50s. We have guys like, Jordan Kilgannon, Daniel Cabea, Jonathan Clark. We have there are a lot of athletes that have bounce and volleyball players that have bounce, but I don't know of anybody that has a verified 55-inch plus vertical. I believe that it's possible. I just don't believe we have anybody verified. The highest vertical I've ever seen in person tested is actually 49.5 inches. And that was Jordan Kilgannon last year at Dunk Camp. I've seen a lot of 48-inch verticals, including my own, Coach Chase, the other PPA owner as well, and coach, 48 inches. We have a lot of athletes at Dunk Camp last year, like 47 through 49 and a bit, a lot. So, yeah, I don't know of anybody offhand, but there are a lot of phenomenal athletes out there. I don't get super caught up in like that range, meaning like I'm not like trying to search for the best jumpers all the time. Like I'm so focused on coaching the people that need my help. And a lot of these outlying athletes that jump super, super high, like regardless of who their coach is or who they have access to, they're going to be phenomenal athletes. Like it's like being the teacher of the smartest kid in class. Like they're going to be the smartest kid in class no matter who their teacher is. Will I be able to help them? A little bit for sure. But my time is best served, and Coach Chase's time is best served helping people that actually need our help. Lots of dunkers take off weightlifting before dunk contests. Why is that? Is it because the slow eccentric affect your motor pattern? So when you remove something like lifting heavier weights, you reduce the stress to your nervous system. Jumping is so reliant upon your nervous system being fresh that if you were to lift heavy and load the nervous system, you'd be in a stress state. You wouldn't be as explosive when it comes to a dunk contest. Approach jumps. I've seen that having the leg you push off of during your penultimate step should be as deliberate and close to parallel with the ground as possible. Close to parallel. Do you mean perpendicular during the push or like I want to know the context of parallel, but the push through the penultimate stride from your toe off to the contact of your plant foot, which is the first of that last two contacts, is a very deliberate effort. I think the biggest mistake is that athletes bring in too much speed into the push, and then there's no change of acceleration. If you're going too fast into the push, you oftentimes will actually decelerate through that push or through that transition penultimate in order to be able to control your speed into takeoff. So that's why this progressive, connected, slow to fast approach is so necessary. And that penultimate is responsible for continuing the acceleration and lowering the hips into your takeoff. Would simple hip mobility exercises help? Or are there more specific exercises that will help with this? If you mean like just the extension, I think that's what you're talking about, is the extension. So when you go to push, is that this foot is like back, right? You get that extension through the hip. That's going to be a lot of hip flexor, psoas, TFL, and a lot of the hip flexor complex, and then developing strength through that range of motion. But if you are, again, person to person, there are different types of jumpers. Okay, there are jumpers that really benefit from ground contact time. They need a longer ground contact time to develop power. They get a bit lower into their jump. You'll see them long, kind of accentuated push, lower plant, block is a little bit further away from the body. There are more elastic jumpers, bouncy, taller. The penultimate looks shorter, still long, but there's not a big extension through the penultimate. Keeps the body over the leg a little bit more, not quite as much bend on the plant. Block foot closer to the plant foot. Elastic jumpers. The goal really is, no matter what type of jumper you are, that through the penultimate stride is active. Doesn't always have to look the same, just needs to be active. You're welcome for answering. How often do you train athletes in person, and where's your gym located? Chris, so we train athletes. So I used to be a daily, into my gym, athletes on the front lines all the time. But as PPA is starting to scale, as we are starting to affect more people all over the globe, I've opened up a coaching certification. My availability needs to be more open, which means that when I see athletes in person, we are seeing each other for chunks of time, usually like an overhaul. We call them jump overhauls. My gym is located in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, but I travel a lot for overhauls. So I'll get brought in and contracted out, brought into someone's location. I'll be there for 3-4 days. We'll work through technical interventions. I'll talk about training. We'll arrange something, and usually that athlete is brought on to be a kind of an ongoing athlete on our online platform after I leave. So I do see people in person through workshops, through camps, and through jump overhauls or jump analysis. And those are things that can be arranged. If you're looking to work with myself in person, we can definitely arrange something like that. That being said, it's an investment in yourself, right? I'm a specialist, and as such, there are specialist rates associated to that because the time is a little less available than it used to be. But we put in great work. I love coaching a great deal, and I love working with everybody that comes my way or decides to bring me out and work there. Dexton and Just Fly are very elastic. Yes, absolutely. Just Fly is probably one of the most elastic jumpers I've ever met. He had a very unique approach, but he's a very much so an outlier. He's a guy that doesn't lift, almost never lifts, and really just runs chicken step, jump, hop step, and catapults off the ground. That's not a way I would ever teach someone how to jump, but Justin learned to jump on his own, and he jumps very well. And Dexton, a little bit more compact, but very explosive, very elastic. Can you give some tips for jumping out of the sand and beach volleyball, please? Yeah, be aggressive with your last two contacts, your plant and your block. You want to pack that sand hard. So when you go through that penultimate, that second last kind of longer step, you're going to drive that plant block foot almost simultaneously into the ground to get a nice packed ground. 1 second, I got a text here. Oh, 1 second. All right, I got to go. I'll see you in a bit. I apologize. Thank you.